Okay, guys, we'll just give it a few moments for people to join in. I got my Mountain Dew, and I am ready to go. So hopefully this will be a fun night of coding, and we'll see how things go. I apologize if I keep looking off to the side. I've got chat and everything. I'm still figuring out how to do all of this streaming on Twitch. So if people have tips or tricks, I'd love to hear them. And a little bit of patience as I'm still learning this and trying to figure everything out would be great. Okay, I think the appropriate thing to do is broadcast it out on the Twitters to see if people are interested, and then we will get going. Let's see, doing my first live stream. Okay, there we go. So we will see how that goes, and then we will jump in and get going. So just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Kevin. I am the current maintainer of material design in XAML. I absolutely love WPF. I've been doing it for about 10 years now, and everything about it just excites me. I love working in XAML. I've done a little branching out into things like Xamarin Forms and UWP, but I always come back to WPF. A while back, I took over as maintainer just to make sure that this library keeps moving forward and that there's updates and bug fixes and lots of cool stuff coming. So hopefully tonight we're going to get to some of those new features that are coming and work on some of the code and get some of these pull requests merged in. So just for those people who have never worked with material design in XAML before, I'll pop over here. If you're just getting started and wanting to get going, the website for it is materialdesignandxaml.net. You'll find information about all the features, everything that's here. The more important stuff is actually jumping over to the GitHub, which is, jump over here. So Material Design in XAML, Material Design in XAML Toolkit is the GitHub repository. And down on the README, you'll find a lot more information and then access to the NuGet information and what's out there. So there are daily CI builds that go out whenever changes get merged into the master branch, but 251 is the current stable branch that's out there. One of the common questions that I always run into is people asking, okay, I've downloaded the repository, but I can't get it to compile. The first thing to note is that this library is always going to be using the latest version of Visual Studio. So if you aren't on the latest if you are not on the latest version of Visual Studio and you're running into compilers, that's probably the reason. Basically, we're going to be taking advantage of the latest features available in C#. We're still targeting an older version of .NET, so you can still use this library in your WPF apps all the way back targeting .NET 4.5, but at least if you want to compile the library from the source code, you are going to need the latest version of Visual Studio. So currently, there is nothing in Visual Studio 2019 that is required, but within the next several months, we are going to be adding support for .NET 5, which is going to require doing some updates to the project files and the solution. And so you can expect that in the next few months, the requirement is going to be for compiling source to upgrade from Visual Studio 2017 to 2019. Going down through here, there is a wiki page with a bunch of information. If people are wanting to help out, this is a great area that I would love some help on. I've been trying to go through and put in notes and reorganize this and get some better documentation. There's a pretty good getting started guide here. There is this examples repository, which is another repository that I've started, just as a place where when people have questions, if there's something that someone asks that looks interesting, if I have the time, I'll go through and actually spin up a small example. Typically, these are organized kind of by the individual control that you might be interested in using. And so there is a lot of useful information in here, especially for a lot of common questions that people have. The other thing that's worth noting is at the bottom of this examples repository, there is some links to some blog posts that I've written. So especially if you're looking for information on how do I get going with this material design library, what does it take? It's actually pretty simple. I'll just jump over and show this blog post real quick. Step one, create a new WPF project, which if you're here looking for a theming library, I'm guessing you've probably already gotten step one done. Maybe you already have an existing WPF app. Great. You really just need to bring in the NuGet packages. And then there's a few resource dictionaries that you do need to include in your app.xaml. So the four key ones to note is this defaults resource dictionary here. This is what's going to actually bring in the default styles for all of the built-in WPF controls so that you can get that material design theme going. And then the other three are all related to your colors and your color scheme. So you've either got light, or you can replace, put the word dark here instead if you want to go for a dark theme, and then both a primary and an accent color, just as a way to set it up. After that, you want to go through and on all of your windows, make sure that you're binding into the background and the text foreground color, just so that all of your elements pick up your light and dark theme. It's easy to forget this if you're on the light theme, because by default it kind of all just looks the same. But if you're trying to do the dark theme and things aren't changing color for you, this is probably the step that's missing down here. The last thing that's worth noting is this defaults dictionary only brings in one style functionally for most all of the controls. So in the demo application, which we'll take a look at here in a second, you'll notice that it has a whole bunch of styles, specifically for things like buttons. There's a lot of different styles that you can apply to a button, but this isn't going to load all of those styles. We don't want to just load up every possible style available to you and slow down the app. So in those cases where you actually need to bring in a different style, you do need to include another resource dictionary. Typically, I will do this at either like my user control or window level. You can do this at your app.xaml level, but the more resource dictionaries you load there, the slower your app's going to launch because it has more resources it then has to pull in. This is the basic pattern here. You can replace the text button with the name of your control. So you could do toggle button, radio control, etc. To bring in those additional styles. So especially if you're trying to type in style, static resource, maybe material design, raised accent button, and you're getting an error in Visual Studio saying, hey, can't resolve this resource, chances are that what you're needing to do is bring in all of the styles for that control so that you can get access to those. Okay, I think that's probably a pretty good introduction. Also, for anyone on the stream, feel free to post questions. I'm happy to go through and take questions or go through examples as people have stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to just kind of carry on forward with whatever I want to work on in this library, and we can do it together. So if there's something else that interests people, please speak up, and I'm happy to dive in and look at that. So let's go through real quick on the demo application. So we're just going to, this is the wrong Visual Studio, that's my samples library. So on the demo, and I think I've got some outstanding changes here, let's just blow those away real quick, because I don't believe, yep, all of these are things that do not need to be here. I was messing around with some scripts and accidentally duplicated a whole bunch of files. And we're just gonna unstage all of that stuff too. We'll leave my PowerShell script sitting around for the moment. We'll get this guy fired up and we'll take a quick look at the sample application that's in here. So it is also worth pointing out that on this, from the main repository page, if we bounce back over here, on the releases section, come on, you can go through and download the demo application as a zip file. So especially if you're looking to try this stuff out and you just want direct access to the source code, the NuGet package, or the demo app, it's all just right here and easy to download for you. When the app fires up, jump in here, and I was picking on button earlier. It's probably one of the more complex ones. But you'll notice we've got all of these buttons in here. And the one thing I want to draw your attention to is kind of this faded out little XAML icon that's sitting down near the bottom of all of these controls. So scattered liberally throughout this app is this little button that you can click on, and it'll actually show you the XAML that was used to generate this control. Now, it's not going to show you any optional resource dictionaries that you may have to bring in order to reference this style, but it is a decent snippet that you can just go in and copy and paste right into your own application if you see something in here that you like. So I think I'm going to probably leave it there in terms of just kind of a walkthrough and an introduction to the library, unless people have further questions. So what I was hoping to start with tonight in here is actually going back and taking a look at some of these outstanding pull requests. So the current version of the library is 2.5.1 right now, and the next version is going to be 2.6.0. There's going to be a lot of additional features and things brought in. 3.0 is largely going to be around probably .NET 5 support. There's nothing in here yet, so this means I haven't decided what needs to actually end up in there. But in 2.6.0, there's one of the big features is improving the theming library. So for example, on that, let me just bring that back here. On this blog post, you'll notice that, it reloads for me, that there were several things that we had to do to bring in these theme colors, and then also going through and doing, we'll fire the demo up here real quick one more time. Going through and changing the theme colors isn't horribly intuitive. The demo app and the library actually come with a bunch of built-in color palettes, which are great. But a common request is asking, these color palettes are nice, but they don't quite match, my company's theme, or I'm looking to do something a little bit more custom with whatever I've got in here. So, I mean, it's nice. You can go through and toggle it when you change these things up. It modifies the whole application. You get this kind of information going through here, and you can take a look at what the things are. So as part of kind of trying to change this up for 2.6.0, the big desire is to make doing those theming changes easy. And more importantly, making it easy to go through and do custom themes on top of that. So there are a couple outstanding enhancements from several community members, which we're probably going to come back and look at a little bit later. But the one I was interested in starting with is the one about doing additional colors. So there's a bunch of, and it was done by me, and theme assist overload. That's not it. I think this is the guy here. So there was some changes that went in a while back, and RRS here, Robert Snipe, went through and did a huge amount of work. If you're watching this, Robert, thank you. Everything that you've done in here has been a huge help just trying to get this moving forward. And there's a lot of discussion going back and forth about getting this stuff merged in. So I was looking to see where there was another pull request, and maybe I haven't tagged it in the 260 yet. Is this a different one, or is this the same one? This is here. Let's get the good Git Kraken fired up here, and we'll take a better look, because I thought there was another one that was newer. This one, requesting feedback, and I did not tag this in the 260 milestone. Bad me. Yeah, thanks. Got it, GitHub. So if anybody has feedback on this API, please let me know, as this, I believe, is what we're going to be moving forward with in the 260 release. So down in here, we're changing out the color picker so that we no longer have just those kind of few choices. You actually get several colors to pick from. And there is a slight behavioral change. So for all of the built-in colors, you may notice that the light and dark variants are just slightly different hues. Almost all of the built-in color themes followed a nice predictable pattern, but there was just a couple that were a little off. I'm planning on going through and documenting which ones those are, just so that people can be aware, but that is technically a slight breaking change. So if you see something that looks like a little bit different color that was probably different in a prior version, that's why. So the other thing that this adds, as you can see in this guy down here, is there's going to be a new color picker. So not this predefined one, but the this HSV color picker is going to be included inside of the library so that we have a reasonable color picker to work with. Basically, to do this theming, we were going to need a color picker anyway, and Robert Snipe built an amazing one in here. So first thing to note is, if you're still doing those 4 resource dictionaries like I showed before, this still works just fine. If this is the way you have your library structured, great, you don't need to worry about it. But with this new API, we're adding an additional way to go through. So rather than specifying all 3 of these resource dictionaries, there is a new markup extension for the bundled themes, where you can specify light and a primary color and an accent color and go through and pick those up. In addition, there is another markup extension that I've added in there. So if the built-in color themes work for you, great. This is your easiest option. You're off and running. 2 lines of XAML in your application resources, and you're good to go. If you say, well, that's pretty close, but what I really want to do is change one of those colors, this custom color thing will take, again, an arbitrary color, and it'll generate the light and the dark hue variants for you, so that you can go through and get a little bit more custom with each of them in there. The other thing that you can do is, if you really don't want to do this in your XAML and you'd rather do it in C#, or you're looking to do something more dynamic, where you're saving the color theme and loading it from some external source, great. You can go through, and there's an example of setting it up here to be able to set up those theme resources. So great feedback in here. There was a couple questions, and specifically what I was looking to put them in is when I did this change, I dropped the secondary light and dark variants. So you'll notice that up here, where on the primary color we have light and dark variants, the secondary one, those have been dropped. So we are going to be looking at getting those guys put back in, because I think that's probably the last thing that is needed on here before pushing this library for, or getting this pull request merged in and closing out a bunch of these pull requests for 260. So let's give that a shot and see where we're going. So I'll grab that guy here. Oh, I guess I'm already in the right repo. Excellent. I am behind, so let's pull that guy up. And then I've got way too many things going. So let's take a look. Pull request 1239. I think I probably have that checked out already. Oh, come on. What's your problem? Checkout successful. So we are down here, and I don't know what it's oh, it just stashed my script files. Okay, cool. Let's go back to our, go ahead and reload the universe. I understand. I changed all of the files out on you. Okay, so, and for anyone who has questions on kind of my style or layout, so Visual Studio 2019, I do have ReSharper installed and I love it. I also, every time I get a new Visual Studio, the very first thing I do is I drag the Solution Explorer back over to the left where I firmly believe it belongs. People have a tendency to disagree with me on that point. So let's fire this guy up and check what state we left this demo in. I think it's pretty close to exactly what was on that pull request, but we will see. While this thing gets up and going. These things closed out. Let's see, so let's just post a link for anyone in the chat. Okay, so let's come over here and let's take a look at this new color tool. Something that I probably could use a lot of work is this demo app is sort of become a bit of a dumping ground. Every time there's a new feature, things just get tacked on, and I think some of these things need to be broken up. Specifically, this buttons and toggles has become a massively huge page with lots of hidden things off to the side, and I think some of these items just need to be broken up and given their own page to live in. So this stuff is living in a new color tool option. So let's see, we can go light, we can go dark. Great. We can change these guys up. Bounce that around. If we come over here, this control here is not going to be included in the library. This is just going to be something left in the demo application. So if anybody wants this, Robert Snipe once again did a great job putting this together. Feel free to copy this in if it's something you want, but I don't think it's a very good general purpose control to be included in the library. If I'm wrong and it is something that you think is valuable, go ahead and open an issue and we can discuss it further. But I think for now, we're just going to leave just this this HSB color picker in here. So we can drag this guy around. We can switch to our secondary color and say, well, we're going to do something like this. Maybe go a little darker. Oh, go brighter. Maybe bring it on over here and let that guy warm up. So cool. So I think all we're missing down here is bringing in secondary accent colors, and I'm noticing that I'm getting my, I like this I like this look, but I'm wondering if we also need, in addition, this primary here. Does this, if I, so this is just selecting primary, secondary, and generating the whole thing. So it is worth noting, you can set just the primary mid color and it'll generate light and dark variants for you. I don't think this code is exposing it, but it is possible to set these to very different colors across the board. So you could have like a red for your light, purple and maybe a blue over here if you desired. I don't think it would look that great, but it's doable. I'm wondering if perhaps we should expose that in the demo app, and rather than just having you pick primary or secondary, if we should do it here. And I'm wondering, so right now the only indication of when you've selected something is the letter here. You can go over here and pick on the text color as well if you'd like to toggle that around and change it. Let's bring that guy over. So you can get the primary text and the secondary text colors changed as well. But I'm getting distracted. We need to add the light and the dark on the secondary color. So let's go back, take a look and see where I ended up dropping those. So those are the built-in themes. Oh, I guess real quick too, we'll just do a brief layout of the project for anybody who wants to dive in and get going in here. So when you clone the solution, there's a couple demo apps. The main one is Material Design Demo. This is the one that you've been seeing me run, this guy right here. We do also integrate with MA apps and another library called Draggables that will give you a nice draggable tab item control if that's something you want. So the primary purpose of this demo is to show off that integration. The main library is going to be this Material Design Themes WPF library. And then as a secondary dependency is this Material Design Colors, where the idea is we can build in custom themes and rev this guy somewhat independently of this one. This is just the structure that was there when I first took over. Seems to work fairly well. Inside of the main library, most of the actual classes are just right at the root. It's important to note there are some custom controls that are added by this library, but this library's purpose is not to be a controls library. It's largely designed to be a theme library around the existing controls. We add in controls when necessary to implement material design, but it is but just arbitrarily adding additional controls isn't something that I'm really looking to do. This colors control is the one of the first controls I've brought in just because we've been trying to be really sparing on how many extra controls this library supports. There are some extra libraries that bring in more controls. Great. Feel free to bring in and use them as necessary. So in this case, I am just going to jump over to the Colors Tool View model and the Colors Tool View. The other thing to note is I turn off the XAML Designer almost immediately. It's gotten better, but still not to the point where I would rather use it. The one setting I will point out, so underneath Tools Options, the way I tend to like to develop is, so XAML Designer, uncheck that box right out the gate. I believe it is underneath debugging. Yeah, so underneath debugging general in this long list of checkboxes. So enable UI debugging tools for XAML. And then I turn off the runtime tools. So a lot of times when you fire up a WPF app, you'll see a black bar right here that gives you access to the Visual Studio, like the live property editor, the live visual tree, that kind of thing. It works great. I prefer a tool called Snoop instead, but if you want the built-in Visual Studio stuff, it works just fine. But the key one here is this enable XAML edit and continue. This is largely how I get away without using the designer, because rather than using the designer and having it guess what my app might look like at runtime, I can just edit my XAML and see the running application and know what my app is going to look like at runtime. So I tend to like doing that better and just making changes directly as the app's going. It's worth knowing it's not perfect. You can always make changes that it's not going to be able to automatically update for you, but it's pretty good in a lot of cases. So I'm just going to start collapsing a few things here so I can find my way around, because it's been a little while since I've touched this pull request. This style interests me. It is an implicit style, so it is serving some purpose if its purpose is to hijack a previous style declaration. So I'll leave it for now, but that may be something I come back and look at. So primary selection, secondary selection. I think this is probably what we're looking for down here. So the primary selection is a border. Go ahead and collapse this. It seems like there's probably some room for code reuse in here as well. I'm going to flip this to attribute syntax, because that's a lot of XAML for just a letter P. So we've got that guy there, uniform grid, which then adds the primary light and primary dark, which I'm guessing this is the bit that we are missing down on the secondary. So let's go ahead and collapse that guy up. Do the same thing here for the attribute syntax. For those people wondering about the keyboard shortcut, that's either Alt-Enter or Control-Period, depending on your keyboard layout, to get that to pull up. So it does have both of these in here, but the fact that nothing shows up makes me suspect that these resources don't exist, which I think is probably the whole issue. So let's just go on a little bit of a hunting spree for a moment. I might have to go back to the original branch just to look and see where those were declared. So, any like Visual Studio? Joy? That's all of them, huh? Okay, so if that's going to be all of them, let's go through and see where we were setting these guys up at. So this is probably a good time to somewhat demo the changes to the API for actually going through and changing the theme. So the palette helper class that has been there for a while has gotten a little bit of love. So all of the previous methods that existed on here have been marked virtual. You are still welcome to use them, but be aware that probably in 3.0, my plan is to remove these in favor of switching over to the newer methods. So all of these ones marked obsolete are basically forwarding on to the newer get theme methods that exist inside of here. So specifically being able to pull out the the theme object, which is now a code representation of all of the colors that exist inside of it. So previously, you'd have to go through and memorize all of the fancy brush names if you wanted to change out one of the colors. Now you can just get a hold of the theme with palette helper get theme. So for example, pull the theme out, and then from there you are free to, suppose I have to actually stop debugging to show this. Come on, stopping's easy. Here you go. On the theme itself, when my stuff opens, you now have access to all of the colors, and you can go through and set them. So these paired colors, like for example the accent color, which I think I might need to revisit the naming of this. We've got two naming schemes, whether we call it accent or secondary. I need to double check what the material design spec calls it, and I think I'm probably just going to standardize on that. Just to try and have it match. So you can either go through and create up a new paired color object, which itself takes in a color and a foreground. But if you don't specify the foreground color, it will helpfully go and try to determine what the appropriate contrasting color is for the foreground. So for those people familiar with various color spaces, it basically does a grayscale conversion to try to check whether the opposite would be black or white. So if you don't specify a foreground color, you're either going to get black or white as your foreground color, whichever one is determined to be as far opposite of your current color that's in there. And I believe for this theme, right here is where we have accent, primary mid, primary light. And I think this is ultimately what we need to change here. So this guy needs to go to primary or to accent mid. And I think I'm going to intentionally not do the refactoring just because I want to go and look at all of the compile exceptions just to track down and figure out where those are and what needs to happen. So we are going to add light and dark variants here. And I think that gets that off to the races. And let's just take a look at the fallout. Also, I should mention, if people find these videos helpful and you want to see me keep doing them, really looking to get feedback. I don't mind doing these. I figured I would give it a try and just see if it was something useful that people liked. If it is, I'm happy to keep doing them. My plan is to try to do them weekly at the same time every week, and see if they gain traction and it's things that people enjoy. I'll continue doing them. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to bail them. So feedback, whether it's a follow on the channel or a comment in the chat room, any of those would be very welcome. Okay, so this is the implementing class. So this guy is going to need it. That's fine. Once again, I'm intentionally not doing the refactoring so that I can just follow through on each of these. And so I want to look at them to make sure I'm getting all of these set up appropriately. So I don't think this is doing anything fancy beyond just adding things. Great. Awesome. Okay, there's that. It is also worth noting that it's intentional that the theme is an interface, not a tightly coupled class. That way, if you want to roll your own implementation of iTheme where you retrieve the colors from some other source, great. Nothing in the library should be tied directly to it. Aha. And now we come across the offender. So here we go. So this method here actually takes the iTheme and goes through and adds all of the resources into a given resource dictionary. So if you go through the palette helper class, this resource dictionary will be the root application resource dictionary that all of these will get added into. And so this is where we just need to go through and add in the light and dark variants. So let's go back to our color tool and look at what these brush names were. So secondary accent brush, secondary accent brush. And the problem is this name I don't want to change because this is what it is in the current 2.5.1 release. And so changing this name would be a breaking issue. I do want to go through and eventually clean this up because it does feel redundant having the word secondary and accent both on there. Let's just take a quick peek at what the specification actually uses for their terminology. I think it's color system. I've clearly been to this site a couple times. So they're using primary and secondary color. So that's probably the naming scheme that I want to go with, is primary and secondary. Okay, so I can't touch this brush name, but what I can do is change up what we call this. So primary light, I think rather than accent mid, this guy now does need a refactor to be called secondary mid, because that will align with what is expected. And I think that means that this name down here, secondary accent foreground brush, I think what we might do is we might just smooth this over and store the same brush as in two places. That might be a worthwhile thing to do, and just store this brush with two separate keys. That way we can have both the new name that matches the naming scheme as well as the old name as well. Yeah, because all this guy does is really go through and do an animation all the way through, if it can, obviously. So trying to think of how to do this with duplicate names. I'm wondering if I just reorder the parameters and let this be a params on the end. I don't know if that really helps. I don't know if I gain a lot of value by making sure that both keys go to the same solid color brush instance. Maybe there's value in having them be separate. Yeah, so let's just put a note here. So nota bene, these are here for backwards compatibility and will be removed in a future version. Likely 3.0, because that's when we can make breaking changes across the board, and it'll be a good time to clean this up. So we basically, to make sure that I've got my naming right, kind of just want to do this, and all of these guys should become secondary, and this should all just be, so what did I rename it? Oh, we did not rename these other properties. So let's fix that real quick, because I do want this to be secondary light and secondary dark. And it feels weird having them having the secondary one come before the primary. Maybe that's just me. So that'll work. Okay, so that gets both of those in there. And let's go back and finish that. So you go here. That feels like something that pattern feels like it's right for a refactor. I might need to do that at some point, but okay. So now we have secondary hue mid, light, and we haven't broken backwards compatibility because we'll still make sure we tack that same brush on for that. I do want to go back here though, and I want to bring, because people tend to look at the demo app as a way, as an example. So the demo app isn't necessarily great code design on how I would suggest you design an app, because this is largely here to show off the breadth of features in this library. In an app, you are not, and probably shouldn't use every feature in the library. For example, there's very different structures for MVVM versus code behind, and we use both inside of the demo. In a normal app, I would suggest that you pick one design paradigm and stick with it. So just keep that in mind. I do try to make sure that the code that's in here is in a reasonable state, that if you copied it in and reused it, that it would be a reasonable bit of code that will work for you. So secondary, what is this triggering on? Active scheme. Hang on, what was this doing? Secondary accent, foreground brush. So secondary hue, mid, foreground brush, I believe is what that should be, right? Secondary hue, mid, foreground brush, which should match the other one. Great. Secondary hue, mid, foreground brush. And then this is effectively, let's see, so this is setting the text box here. Secondary hue, mid, foreground brush. Secondary hue, mid brush. Okay, so that gets this much in here. I think that might be enough to get this, not quite, because we have compile errors that I left in here. So secondary mid, I don't know why I let this thing set to an empty color. Seems secondary mid. I'll have to come back and look at this. This feels like a mistake right here. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so secondary mid, secondary mid. Okay, and on these ones here, we basically need to do very similar to what we did above and below. So secondary light, dark. Basically, it's the same code as what we were doing with the primary scheme, except for now that we are going to have light and dark variants on this as well. We want to make sure we duplicate that appropriately. So light, dark. I can type, just not when people are watching. Okay, so from here, again, same type of thing as what was being done here. So secondary light, dark. And let's see, this is just passing straight through. So once again, light, dark. Because you'll notice, at least in this demo app, when you change the foreground colors, it sets all of the foreground colors to this value. Again, if you were doing this in your own app, you have individual control of all of these. So if you wanted to have one be red, blue, and yellow, you are free to do that. I just don't recommend it. Okay, cool. Let's see if it works. Hopefully I've got enough Mountain Dew to last me. I was planning on going a couple hours, and we'll see how far we get on this. Ideally, I would like to get this pull request, if not merged, at least close to merged. Okay, so where are we at here? So inside of this query palette, this is part of the old Palette Helper API. So this is smoothing over to avoid breaking anyone's old code that was using this method. So I believe this is just going to be SecondaryMid to pull it back out. SecondaryMid. Okay. Probably should just check my error list to see if there was more. Probably is. Yeah, set accent color. So this is a helper method on the I theme itself. And I think I want to go through and remove this word accent. Go ahead, stop building for a minute. Thanks. So SecondaryMid. So once again, so just like how the primary color, you can pass in a single color and it'll automatically generate the lighter and darker versions of it. We just need to do the same thing here. So grab light, grab dark, and lighten, darken. And that should get us going there. I think that probably clears out the error list. Not quite. So this guy is pulling out, this is the inverse of the old one. So I think what we want to do here is actually just replicate this work. And a simple check will be if I can just replace where it says primary with secondary. Then I'll know we've got a pretty good naming scheme going, or at least I was consistent. Just like in all of programming, naming accurately is very, very important. Or at least naming consistently is important. Okay, and then great. So something like that. Okay, I think that's the last of our errors. Great. At some point I saw those 25 warnings sitting there, so I'm going to probably need to go back through and clean those up. It's just one of the minor things. Something that this library hasn't gotten added yet is a, or did we? I thought somebody may have added an editor config. Maybe I'm getting it confused. Oh, we do have an editor config. Might need to just get this cleaned up and force implementation of that guy. Okay, secondary hue light brush. So what do we got going on here? So we are attempting to query the theme and not getting it. So how did we get in here? So from our color tool, it attempted to query the current theme, but we should have already set the theme. So how are we able to secondary? Just a spelling error, is it? Secondary hue light brush, primary hue light brush. Well, let's just start this guy over here real quick and make sure that we actually get this thing flowing through. Because in the app.xaml, so we never actually got into here. Oh, that's an interesting problem. Because right now, the demo app in its app.xaml has all three, or I should say examples of all three ways of setting. And so somebody that's setting their theme colors using the old resource dictionaries, this accent theme isn't going to have that brush inside of it. So we probably need to be a little more clever here, rather than just throwing an exception if it's not found. Because we've effectively added additional brushes that aren't going to be there. So, a couple options. So we could have this code handle it, or we handle it in the accent color dictionaries themselves. That, as much as I hate going through and making a sweeping change like that, the only way anyone's going to get this code is if they've upgraded to the 2.6.0 release. And if they've upgraded to the 2.6.0 release, we can ensure that they're at least on a minimum version of the colors NuGet package as well. So we might go through and just rev this version to make sure that when you upgrade to the 2.6.0 here, the build pipeline puts in the version number. Once that updates appropriately, we can force a particular version of the colors repo. I think I like that option best. So, unfortunately, that means a bunch of changes through here. And it also means calculating out what each of these colors are. Because effectively, that's what each of these are. I don't know why we have this secondary. I realize this is one of the areas where accent is still going to be used. And again, I don't want to change this name because that would break anyone's existing code that was pointed at this. So what's the easiest way to go through and calculate out all of these? Because I would like to have, basically what I'm looking to do is on each of these brushes, is I want to build out the those new brush names that we just added. So theme extensions, I think, is where this guy lives. No, where is the set theme method? This guy. That is in the wrong repository or wrong project. So let's bounce back and so set theme, this guy. Because we've added these brushes that we would like to exist. So I would like to go through and figure out, ideally, so we would add a second brush for that, mid foreground becomes this. And then the problem is, what I really want to have is these brushes also exist. So the light one here or the dark ones down here. But to do that means actually calculating the light and dark versions of each of these colors. And in an ideal world, that would also mean updating these colors. So most of the time, we can just simply take these colors at face value. I'm wondering if rather than going through all of this effort, if it would be better to smooth over this inside of here where it's going to load these color schemes. That would make the rest of this much, much easier, rather than going through and adding up all of these and calculating all of these colors. I think that might be what I do. Because then it doesn't matter about revving the NuGet versions. That's probably cleaner. Okay, I've talked myself back into the opposite option. So let's do that. So we're going to pull so let's go back down here, and we're going to do we're going to just switch this up and allow this guy to take in an arbitrary number of keys, and we'll just loop through them one at a time. Sure. With keys, we'll just do a string join here, comma separated. And what did you do to me here? It's a little too useful. There, that way if we pass it, it can join these things together, and we'll just do that. So from here, we will just go for each string key and keys, and then first one wins, and then it can fall back. So this guy here, we're going to have to do these in a bit of a different order. Let's see, color, secondary, mid, it's get color. So we are going to start with looking for the new one, because ultimately at some point I would like to obsolete the old one there. But for now, we're going to keep it in for now until such a time as we can remove it. So that guy will go there. And let's see here. I wish there was a way to do this where I pass both. Color, get color, string. I really want to try get color, I guess is what I'm really after. So try get color, string key. So effectively do this logic here, and so out color. Let's see here. So this guy becomes taking the key, check for the brush, color gets, and then turn true, color gets default, and return false. The empty default is a newer C# feature, just one of those things, why we need at least Visual Studio 2017. So we're going to do this, and then rather than duplicating this code, we'll leverage our new method that we have. So key out color. Once again, inline out parameters are a newer C# feature. I believe 7.3. Don't quote me on that. Okay, so this guy will give us a try get color. That way we have a way of testing to see if one exists, which is going to be important. So this is going to become secondary mid color. And we are going to have to do a similar thing up here. Just leave that for the moment. Secondary mid foreground. Okay, so let's grab secondary mid foreground brush. It's the primary one I want to hunt for. But as a secondary choice, we will fall back to the old brush name and go hunting for that. Great, so those should both exist. Secondary mid foreground. And I put these in the wrong place. So let's do the light one, I guess. So if try get color, we will do out color secondary light. Actually, we're just going to say if it's not found, then our secondary light is going to be the mid color only lightened. And we'll do the same thing with the dark one. So that way, if I should get my names right, light, dark, secondary, dark. Secondary, and this becomes darken, and this becomes secondary dark. So that handles at least the background colors. Let's see, secondary light, secondary dark. Now the question is what to do with the foreground color. I think let's just go with, if not, try get color. Let's do out color secondary light foreground. And this should become light. Then the secondary light foreground, just so if it doesn't exist, we'll just grab that, and then we will use that guy down here, because this extension method where it gets the contrasting foreground color is effectively the same thing it would have done if we had just called the constructor that only takes in a single color, because this is the method that gets used to calculate out the appropriate foreground color. I think we're going to go like this. Yeah, I think that's a little more than what I was anticipating, but it'll do. It will get the job done. And this way we don't break any old apps when they upgrade, because we do want to make it as smooth as possible of an upgrade. Okay, so secondary dark foreground gets secondary dark contrasting foreground color. And then we will just pass this guy right along here. Okay, let's give it a shot, see how it works. Something's still bothering me that this could have been done better. But I don't see an obvious answer just yet, so we will go with it for now. I'm also wondering about doing this params with the string array and the allocations, but that's a smallish number, and I don't anticipate this code being invoked thousands of times. Okay, so now we get into here, and hopefully just works. Well, hey, it launched. That's a good sign. Let's go into our color tool. Look at that. Now we've got light and dark variants of our secondary color. We'll switch over and we'll do something like this. Ooh, something is not quite right. All of these values are getting the same thing, which means I made a mistake somewhere. So let's back up to our demo. It's probably in the view model, I'm guessing. So set secondary foreground color, change secondary color. So that's all fine. Let's just check the set theme. Light, mid, mid, dark, dark, dark. Change secondary color. I'm missing a darken call somewhere. Darken and a lighter call, because it sets up the secondary color, but it doesn't. Let's see where we were changing it to support. Change primary color. Ah-ha-ha. Ah-ha-ha. This is where we went wrong. So, we don't want to just set all of them to the same color. We want to actually have a little variety here. So the light is the dark, so secondary light is the lightened version of mid, dark is the darkened version of mid. Let's see here and see, because I think this is, at this point, I think this pull request is getting close enough that we can probably just get this guy merged in, and then just look at some of those additional ones for 2.6.0, because the 2.6.0 release, really the big feature is going to be, I guess for me, the theming library changes. There's been quite a few community pull requests with some really nice extra styles and themes for some of the controls that I want to make sure get into the 2.6.0 release as well. They have been looking very good. Okay, so back over to our secondary. Change this guy up, drag him around. There we go. Now our dark is darker and our light is lighter. And everything just works as it was supposed to be. It is worth noting that even though these things are part of the theme, at least at present, there is nothing in the library that's leveraging these brushes. So these are largely just there for your app's own consumption. Okay. Cool. So let's review changes and get this guy checked in. So quick checks here. So we changed that to attribute syntax. Great. I think I just want to scoot this guy over. We changed the name of our brush to be the secondary hue to use the new brush name. Great. We set the text there, secondary hue. Hey, good to see you. And nice to see you on here as well. Thank you for the pull request, by the way. This is Magnus, correct? I've been really impressed with the work that's been in there. Okay, so brush names. Let's go in. And let's take a look and see what all we did in here. So this was an addition. This is assuredly a mistake. So while you always review your code changes. So this updates, so rather than accent, it'll be using the secondary name. Hey, that's fine. I appreciate the help on getting those pull requests in. I'm planning on going through your other open pull request. While you're here, I'll just grab that real quick. So currently looking at trying to get the theming API pulled in, but I know you submitted another one that I just need to take a little time and review. I believe it was the icon, yeah, the icon button one, which looks pretty nice. I did notice your comments in here, so I was going to look over the implementation and see how it goes, but as always, it looks like pretty clean code and really great work, and I appreciate the contribution as well. Okay, so secondary theme, great. This guy, we don't want any changes in him, so we'll just get rid of that. Okay, so we got, rather than using accent color in our theme, we're going to stick with the material design naming of primary and secondary, which is great. Let's see, what do we do in palette helper? So clean up usings, and then we've got a couple of changes for the naming refactor, which is fine. And then in here we've got the new secondary brushes, the backwards compatibility hack for now, so we can work around it, and then the stuff that we just did for querying out and doing fallbacks on the secondary colors when they may not exist. Should be fine there. A little cleanup on the get color as well as the try get color down here. So let's see. All those resource names as strings, would it make sense to do at some point, refactor them into constants for easier discoverability through IntelliSense? What do you think? Yeah, so I would have no problem refactoring them out into constants. The hard part is I don't expect anybody to use those constants in their XAML. And so to some degree, these are going to be kind of duplicated across multiple areas, just because when you're using something like a static or a dynamic resource to look these up, I wouldn't necessarily expect a constant. But honestly, a pull request refactoring these guys out into their own constants, I would not turn that down. Having a centralized place for this is definitely a good idea, especially with the fact that I've now had to duplicate these in multiple areas. That's almost assuredly a sign I've made a mistake. Let's keep going down through here. So rather than accent, once again, rename those into secondary light, mid, and dark. And same thing there. So yeah, if you wanted to submit a pull request for that, I would say probably wait until we get this pull request merged, which hopefully is tonight. at the rate this is going, I think there's probably a pretty good chance this gets merged into master. So hopefully people on the CI builds can play with it. So if you want to submit a pull request at that point, like I said, I'd be happy to look at it and bring it in. I am really hoping that people will start looking at these new theming changes as soon as the CI build goes out, and start getting feedback, because I do want to let it simmer a little bit, just to give people a chance to play with it and provide feedback. So what do we do here? Added in, or let's start with this, renamed accent to be secondary to match the material design spec, and then added in secondary light, dark variants to the theme. Okay, let's get that guy. What are you squawking about? I forgot to save a file. Just one more check, just to make sure. Just a little paranoid to make sure I don't break anything extra in there. Cool. So that works. Sync it. I'm a little scared to look, but I suppose if we're going to talk about actually merging this pull request, we should probably go and look at the diff and see what is still outstanding that might prevent this from getting merged in. So let's go back here and take a peek. So refresh, and this thing should hopefully update. Just only a few commits. Yep. So 82 instead of 81. We've only managed to touch 114 files. Just a minor change. Okay. The other thing that I guess I'll just go through and show here real quick is part of what also prompted this theming change is the MA apps integration. It was very easy to have things just break every time MA apps added a new brush, or if somebody wanted to integrate another theming library on top of this. All of the palette helper stuff had a lot of hard-coded values that just happened to match the MA apps brush names, which was fairly problematic. So as part of this, there's now an easier way to go through and wire up. So if we go and look at this guy here, there's a theme manager that you can now query out that will raise an event when the theme changes. So when the user requests a change and there's a new iTheme that's being set, this event gets raised, and it gives other code an opportunity to go through and run and be able to actually toggle and make theming changes. So the MA apps NuGet package will get revved with this 2.6.0 version as well. And so now when the theme changes, it allows all of those brush settings to occur, and now all of those hard-coded MA apps brushes live up in Material Design Themes MA apps rather than down in the core library where they were before. So this also should give people the freedom, if there's another library that you want to integrate this with and you want to do something special when the theme changes, or maybe just in your own app, there's now that availability to do it. Hopefully before 2.6.0, I will add documentation to the wiki for this. I have been horrible about documenting, and I need to get better. And again, if people want to help with that, I would not turn it down. Why is, oh, because it's calling a different overload. Oh, whew. Okay. So let's go back here and take a look at this guy and see if there's anything that needs to be done. So this line here should probably be stripped out. This is old code when we were testing stuff. So let's go back. Because again, I am just looking to get this cleared out so we can get this pull request merged. So that is no longer a thing. So again, if you want to go through and bring things in, there's still some work you need to do the MAAPS compatibility. Specifically, you need to pull in the MAAPS resource dictionaries. You need to use the new markup extension for the theme. This also lets it be theme aware and update as changes occur. You need to pull in material design and then pull in the material design MAAPS compatibility. This just adds additional styles and themes for MAAPS controls to theme them up as material design controls. And there is a bug fix that will be going in with 2.6.0 that goes into this. The numeric up-down control had a duplicate underline on it, so that'll get smoothed over there. Okay, so back to pull request. So that line's cleaned up. That's there. White space change. Dead code at the bottom. So we'll clean that off too. Get that out of there. And let's keep going here. So white space changes using declarations. That's fine. Using statement cleanup. Show me the XAML renames, which is fine. All of this code is here largely just to show examples. If people have feedback on which of these should be the default, my personal opinion is this is the better way to do the theming because it's the shortest and the simplest and the most straightforward, but I couldn't decide, so I left all three options in here. Okay, so that cleans up some of the naming. Show me the XAML stuff is in there. Great. And then this is showing the code behind approach to changing the theme. I think what I'm going to do, though, is clean up this palette helper down here. So, because that line wasn't in there previously. So, app.xaml and the code behind. So let's go clean that guy off too. Just don't like having extra code, especially if it's old API and misleading for people. Okay, so that cleans that guy up. And back to here. So color tool is a brand new file, so I don't really care to look at the diff since I know that the tool works. This has a bunch of unneeded using statements in it, so let's clean those up. Something you'll learn about me very quickly is I aggressively refactor, and I try to be conscious of when I'm making a breaking change, but if I can clean stuff up without breaking anyone else's code, I'm probably going to do it. It's just a simple way to keep things moving forward. Okay, so that cleans that file up. The view model in here. One other comment I'll make too. I've seen a lot of questions on the chat room around like MVVM and view model structure. There is a blog post that I wrote around MVVM and how to actually structure your view models. So keep that in mind. The demo app doesn't do a great job of it, and so I think it's only helping propagate problems. Personally, I like the MVVM Lite framework, but any of the MVVM libraries are good. You're welcome to roll your own, but I would just caution and say make sure you understand what the patterns are for MVVM before you consider doing that. This blog post is also linked from the examples repository down in the bottom. It's the last one down there. Okay, off my soapbox, back to code review. And let's bump this up a little bit. I don't know if people are having... Okay, apparently zooming does not work on GitHub. Or it's really slow. Maybe it's just really slow due to the size of this thing. I'm going to leave it there and see if it jumps. Okay, So view model should be mostly fine. A lot of MVVM command binding stuff for clicking things. It does have this active scheme for keeping track of what color is currently being set. Let's see. Backing fields, probably okay. I generally try to group all of my fields near the top, but that's not a big deal to me here. Let's see here. This palette helper extensions, I want to move that out into its own file. This does not need to be buried inside of a view model where no one can find it. So let's move you out. I don't know if it makes sense to move it into a namespace. There is technically this helper's namespace, but that feels like a pretty generic and not as helpful option. So, despite being named helper. What's going on here? Just stopped loading my diffs. Okay. Reload then. I think my Chrome zooming may have caused confusion. As I am aware how big of a pull request this actually is. There is quite a bit in here. Come on. Wow. Really? I didn't think it was that hard. Give it a minute to catch up. Oh, and there's the zoom happening. Boy, Chrome must have been struggling for a little bit. Ah, there it goes. I think it's just the sheer size of it all is causing problems. Okay, so back down to where we were. So we did the app.xaml. We looked at the color tool view model, and it's still thinking about loading. Okay, so value converter. So this converts a brush to a hex value by looking at this. See, value comes in. I feel weird about the local function in line up above, but not a big deal. Let's see, color to brush converter. It is disappointing we have to do something like this. This is something I want to fix here. If you use your as operator in C#, if the cast fails, it returns null, and this throws a no ref. So the two choices that are better are, if you expect the cast to succeed, just do a direct cast, or use the pattern matching. So color to brush converter. Let's go take a quick color to brush converter. And I'm aware that this is being used in just the demo app, and so it's a little less of a problem. But again, I do try to make this code usable for people. So in this case, I think we're just going to go with the direct cast since that's what we expect to come through. Let's see. It's squawking about that. I think maybe what we do, let's just switch it to pattern matching. So if value is a solid color brush, thank you, ReSharper. We'll go ahead and return that brush's color. Otherwise, let's just do default of color. And so this guy up above here is also squawking that the cast could fail. So if value is color, then we'll return a new solid color brush using that color. Otherwise, we'll return binding do nothing. This is sort of a special object in WPF. If your converter returns it, it'll tell the binding to just stop and, as the name implies, do nothing, which is probably what we want in this case. Other ways, you could just return a null, but I think just telling the binding to stop trying to apply this value is probably reasonable here. Okay, so let's continue down here. Multi-value equality converter. So values come in and it verifies that all values in here equal the first value, or all values are null. Interesting. I wonder why we needed that case. The converter's fine. It's a little weird, but I think I may have even written it. So we will carry on. So documentation link, this is adding the new color tool page. I think these links were largely taken from the previous colors one. And I am going to leave those side by side, but I plan on cleaning and or merging those together. So the existing, I'll just show you, the existing palette page and the color tool page in the demo app. I think what's probably going to happen is those are going to get merged into a single page. That way we only have one page in the app for dealing with theming colors. It just feels like too confusing of a thing to have multiple spots where you can do things like toggle dark and light theme or change the theme colors. So though they do work together I should work together, they don't conflict with each other. Your UI can get in a weird state if you toggle them, but it's probably fine. I just think consolidating down to one will eliminate any confusion that comes from it. So we've got the existing palette view, which is what was there. For example, I can toggle that guy to dark, go over to color tool. You'll notice he still thinks it's a light thing because the old one isn't triggering and this guy isn't watching for the theme change to update his toggle. So I think condensing those together is probably the better option. Onward and upward. So white space changes inside of the main window to indent appropriately. Great. Let's see here. Going down. Changing the default namespace. I'm going to leave it. It is not necessarily related to this work, which is the only reason I'm dragging my feet a little bit. It's also why we're getting these flags up here. It does feel we've got a naming problem that's been around for a very long time, where this project name doesn't actually match the namespace that's inside of it. It's not a big deal, but it does cause confusion. Trying to decide if this, no, I think this one probably needs to be reverted back. So let's go and change that real quick. In the newer CS Proj format in Visual Studio 2019, you can double click on the project node to go straight into the editor for it, which is awesome. So this guy here needs to just be changed back. Okay. Back to the pull request. Okay, so adding in a bunch of stuff for the new converters and color tool. Great, wonderful. Swatches come in here. I'm not going to concern myself with the resources and settings. Let's see. That guy is fine. Okay, and this is an area too that I would be open for feedback on, is the color library has some of these extra convenience methods on them. I am wondering about where to put them. So in the code underneath colors, there's this color manipulation, which is what's housing all of these guys, which is a new namespace to hold all of this information. I'm also considering that. What do we need to do? I wonder what, I need to go back and look at that. So specifically like this color helper, it's what's doing the darkening or the lightening of existing colors, or the shift, or even calculating the distance between two colors. So there's, for those people familiar with color space stuff, for the most part, all of these things have been marked internal, except for the ones that were being consumed by the demo app, just for the purpose of I wasn't sure what ones were needed, and I didn't want to increase my surface area on something that I'd end up not supporting later. So if these things are valuable to people, let me know, and we can talk about turning them public. But for now, I'm not entirely sure how valuable these extra color spaces are. I mean, I do a lot of computer vision stuff, but most of the time I'm not rolling my own classes. I'm bringing in something like OpenCV Sharp or Skia Sharp or any of the other popular painting libraries. But that's at least what all of these classes are. And for now, I think I'm okay merging with them in. Again, they all work. They're just, a lot of them are flagged internal to avoid exposing an API that we don't want to support. With the exception of HSV, let me just double check that real quick. Are all the converters HSV? Yeah, the converters are also marked internal. And this HLS, or HSL, I'm sorry, could probably be turned in. Yeah, like those are currently unused, so they could probably be deleted. I'm going to leave them for the moment until we get closer, but I'm going to make a note to come back and potentially consider just deleting these out of the repo until we actually know for sure that we need them. Okay, so iSwatch. This was a new one. And I think with my refactor, I eliminated the need for it. So let's take a gander real quick at where this guy is actually being used. As I think there is some lookup stuff where it's actually being consumed. Let's see, so swatch helper swatches. You being consumed anywhere? You are. So it is being pulled in. This is being used as the source. Okay, we'll leave it. Come on back, GitHub. Basically, each of these individual swatches are representing one of those built-in color themes. So on each of these, it's effectively a C# code representation of what exists in those XAML files. There's probably, right now we've got some duplication between what's in the XAML file and what's right here. And there's probably some cleanup that could happen around this, but for now, this is working and this is all new API. So I'm less concerned about getting this squared away before merging in. These enums, I know I've seen several people build apps where they've effectively made these exact enums already. These let you go through and pick specifically in the, let's see, material design color. Let's just look at his usage real quick. This guy gets referenced in the bundled theme markup extension. So those two examples in the app.xaml up here in the demo, you'll notice rather than using these three resource dictionaries, we can simply do this one bundled theme down here and just specify the values. The really nice part about this option down here is rather than having to remember what all of the color themes are, because these are just enum members, you get nice IntelliSense about what are the built-in color themes. Let's see here. So slightly off topic, you mentioned the new SDK project type. Do you consider it an improvement? And do you usually upgrade your other WPF projects to the new SDK project type or just apply it to the new stuff? That depends. So the issue right now is the new CS proj format doesn't have support for WPF. And let me rephrase, the released version doesn't have support for WPF. In .NET 5, they are adding WPF support back in, so you can update to it. And by doing so, it also gives you the option of upgrading to .NET Core, which has a lot of just performance improvements in the base class library stuff. So you get some perks just by updating it. It's also a whole lot easier to look at rather than these CS projects, which I'm sure most of us have unfortunately looked at in the past, that are just huge and ugly. The new CS proj eliminates a lot of this. So by convention, it'll pull in all of your C# files and XAML files and nicely nest them for you following this naming scheme. And it just works, which is great. So as far as do I upgrade all of my stuff to it, I'm going to start updating all of my projects to it, but slowly. I believe don't quote me on this, I'm trying to remember from the build conference earlier this week. I believe it's scheduled to release later this year, like August, September. There was a talk from Mads Thorgensen from the build conference where he went over kind of all of the what's new, what's coming, and timeline stuff. I think trying to remember. I thought there was at least another reference to a timeline on kind of one of the Q&A sessions on Channel 9, and I don't recall who was in it now, so that one will be difficult to find. So this project will eventually update to use it because you can go to the newer CS proj and still target the older .NET framework, and it'll work just fine, and you'll get all the performance bits from it. Again, the problem being that to do it, you have to be using the newer, currently unreleased .NET 5. So there's going to be a bit of a timing thing as far as when to upgrade to it. So yes, I will eventually upgrade all of my stuff to it, but it's not something that's going to be happening immediately. It's going to be something that's going to be in the order of like in the next year or something to that effect. But yeah, I do try and update my stuff as much as possible, at least to the newest tooling. I don't necessarily have it point to like the latest version of .NET Core or anything like that, because I've got apps that I run that are targeting still things like Windows 7. So I need to target an older .NET framework, which is fine. But there's no reason not to use the latest tooling, especially once it's been fully released. Great question, though. So let's continue down this, since I got my sidetrack on my enum members. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so these, just one big long enum member, just it contains a list of all of the colors and their individual, or all of the swatches and then their corresponding individual colors. This brings in just all of the color manipulation of files that we were talking about. Nothing here looks out of the ordinary. So that should be fine. This folder include is interesting to me because that is, was it recommended? I've already lost my path. Let's see, themes recommended secondary. Themes recommended. I don't know why this is here. So we are going to just whack it because that does not need to be in there. Okay. This is something I put a to-do on. Right now, the iTheme object contains a bunch of these paired color structs, which is just a wrapper around a color and a foreground color. So if anyone has suggestions on a better name for this, paired color just is the best I've got, and I don't know how to do it better. Let's see, once again, designer CS changes, not really concerned. And then we're going to have a bunch of these swatches, which are just like what we did before, where the colors are being converted over into a nice C# representation that we can query. So those I'm not overly concerned with. Again, I might try to refactor to try and remove some of that, but not a big deal right now because I don't anticipate that API changing, and it's a new API, so if people want to look at it and use it, great. If not, let me know. So this is one of the changes that needed to be made to support the old swatch class. And this guy just consolidates those into a single evaluated property. Great. Swatch helper, static class, static list with a static lookup. This is that MAAPS bundled theme extension that I mentioned. Well, that's actually not a bad idea. Color pair. I think I actually, oh, this is, I keep grabbing the wrong Visual Studio instance. I think I actually do like that better. You know, I'm going to go with it, Magnus. I agree it's not a huge improvement, but I at least like it better than what I was using. So we're going to leave it at that unless somebody gives me feedback on a better name between now and when 2.6.0 releases. Okay, so Material Design Assist. This is all the MAAP stuff where it brings their brushes out of our core library and up into the MAAPs package where it should be. And it also makes for a nice example if somebody else wants to bring in their own theming library and do stuff and integrate. So I don't know of any where people are looking to do that yet, but hopefully at some point. So the MAAPs one then needed to reference the colors project. Great. This is also something that's somewhat new to the library. I have been bringing in XUnit and specifically to be able to unit test some of these controls. It's really hard to unit test a theme library. However, at least the custom controls that we have, we can, for the most part, reasonably test that interaction. So I've been trying to make sure that we have unit tests around the controls behavior. Obviously, I can't unit test the look of a control, but I can certainly unit test the behavior of it to make sure it at least behaves the way I expect. So I don't know if I've gotten a lot of value out of these unit tests yet, but I have been trying to make sure that when control changes come in for functional work, that there are corresponding tests for them. So at least the problem won't go backwards. Okay, so white space cleanup, great. Button assist. If I have to reload this, I need to remember there is a white space button you can turn off so you don't have to see the white space changes. Button assist corner radius. Why is this in here? I remember accepting a pull request for this, but I don't know why this guy is in this pull request. Let's take a quick look. I expect this to be on the master branch. I don't expect this to be off on my branch yet. Oh, I wonder if this came in. Oh, right. This was, ooh, this might be interesting. So this was brought in to support that first color picker, the one with all of the boxes when you tap on it. But I believe I just recently accepted a pull request that did something similar because we had an outstanding feature for exposing this property. This one probably should be deprecated. I will double check that. Let's just do that right now. Let's go back here and let's just check inside of this guy. Oh, look at this. So the pull request hasn't been accepted yet. That's right. I just tagged it for review for 260. Just for people's edification, if I see a pull request come in and I put a milestone on it, that just means I'm tagging it for my own memory to make sure I don't drop it, and I do intend to get it into this release. I obviously have a full-time day job, and so a lot of times I don't necessarily have time to review pull requests right away, but I'll tag things like this so that I can remember to go back and get to them. So if you see something tagged like this, just be aware that it's in there. This is, oh boy, this might then end up causing conflicts, but maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, so they're both in the same namespace and file location, same name. I think, given how close these are, Git will probably just handle it and see the diff. Well, okay, that at least makes me feel better in that I can merge this without breaking stuff. This does have a breaking change here. And I'm wondering if I need to pull in that other pull request straight into this branch first. Maybe we'll do it back to back. Okay, so I think I'm going to let this one slide and then just deal with the merge conflicts on that other pull request since it's already tagged to go into 260 as well. Let's see here. So I don't think this guy breaks anything by setting it up the way he did. Because it's currently only used in one place. So this is the new color picker control. Some template portions that we can theme up if we want. There is a color. The kind of the weird bit here is most of what it's doing is in the HSB or HSV color space. And so there's some sort of daisy chain callbacks. You'll notice in the demo app, there's a little bit of a delay when you drag the color portion around and when it actually updates. That's because doing this conversion is actually takes a little bit of computational power, and then actually doing the theme change hangs the app for a minute. So there's a delay set on the binding. Let's see, so this guy I've spent a lot of time with it. I'm very confident in, especially with all the unit tests that I wrote around it. Let's see, a Boolean converter. This is just a fancy toggle based upon whether you want to set different values for true and false. It's a nice generic to be able to say do an invert Boolean visibility converter, which is what this one, Boolean to visibility converter. Interesting, this class existed. This is probably something that can go away. Latest versions of WPF have a Boolean to visibility converter built in. And I believe this is, yeah. But this sort of base class is totally fine. Let's see, so it appears the base class was necessary to support this one. Boolean to Z-index converter. Okay. HSB linear gradient converter. HSB to color converter. So this is just going from that new HSB class into an actual WPF color, or I guess a solid color brush, as it were. Let's see. Consolidated this into a static convert method. Cool. It's probably fine. I like it. I know there's been people that have had to basically rewrite the same stuff, so that'll be nice. Base theme. This is the underlying interface of iTheme. It basically just contains all of the colors without the actual, so it contains all of the colors used by the styles without the theme colors, if that makes sense. Oh, I may have spoken too soon. Why do we have base theme? Let's go look at this guy. I thought it was a base, but it looks like it may be obsolete. So let's see where it's referenced real quick and clean it up. So color tool. Ah, gotcha. So the base theme, okay, that's right. Base theme is similar to iTheme, except for it has the dark and light brushes built in, and you can copy the values from the base theme into the theme with this method here. So set base theme will then copy all of those color things into the iTheme. That way, if somebody wanted to separate it out, the rationale here is, especially in like Windows 10 or Windows 8, they also, in addition to like light and dark, have things like high contrast. So if somebody wanted to build that out, they could derive from iBase theme and build out a high contrast base theme and have it work. Which somebody might want to do at some point. Okay, that guy's fine. There's our iTheme, which is effectively all of the same values. I know there was some feedback on the pull request about naming these things. And Robert Snipe made a good comment that these were largely based on the names that were in the material design spec. So I think I'm just going to whack these to-dos and leave them here for now. It does feel like a weird name, but at least for where we're at, I think they match everything. There's documentation and examples where people have used these names, so we'll keep them. Okay, and then this is the dark theme, which again is basically a code version of what was out in the original resource dictionary. Same with the light theme. And what do we got here? This is the changes into the core library CS proj. Oh, interesting. I didn't realize we were pulling in hex grid from an outside source. It's good to know. Are we using this hex grid anywhere? Let's take a look, because I don't know. I'd like to avoid adding any extra dependencies to especially the core library. I'm a little less picky about the demo one, but let's. Are you used anywhere? I suspect the answer is probably no. Yeah, I kind of suspect if I whack you, all those go away and I don't have to worry about it. Because I think this was something that was brought in on the old version that we were looking at. So I believe these guys here. I'm going to wait until I get down to the diff for the packet dependencies, but I think I can just revert all of those changes, and then those things will drop off the CS proj when packet updates them. Let's keep on our way down. Additions of a bunch of files. Great, great, great. Palette helper. This one we actually want to make sure we load the diff, because this one we want to make sure that all of the methods that were in there are still in here. Because if anybody updates it, I want to make sure these that the old API is still there, but it's now flagged obsolete, which is important until we rev the major version. So that was fine. Those ones clean up. Obsolete. Right, standard. I got it. So those ones are there. That's a private, so we can change the signature of that. And then these are the new replacement methods that I would expect people to go through. So if you're using Palette Helper and you want to continue to use it, great. These are your new methods. Okay, so event args for that event when the theme changes. Primary swatch change event args. Wanting to make sure this guy's still used. It's just, are you still one reference? Right there. Okay. Yeah, this is part of the old API when we were fiddling around trying to figure out what this new theme API needs to look like. That guy can go away. Great. This one I know is used because this is the event that's raised by theme manager. And this resource dictionary extensions, this needs to be broken up into multiple files. So resource dictionary extensions, because these are fine, but I don't want them all just jammed into one single file. So let's get that cleaned up. Let's see, theme manager. Okay, so you go there. That works. Let me just check here, because I think that theme manager class itself, I might even be able to nest and make it private. Yeah, this guy isn't actually used, so let's just grab him real quick, and because he's only being referenced inside of this resource dictionary extensions class, so we're just going to bury him in here as a private class, because he doesn't need to be exposed outside via anything other than his interface. So you can always query in and get the current theme manager out with this guy, but the actual implementation is going to be hidden away. I suspect there may be more that gets added to this over time, and I don't really want to expose a concrete class when I'm not sure what that API needs to look like. Okay, so let's carry on. So we separated all those out. Those are all the brushes that we discussed earlier. Great. Get theme managers. I call solid color brush. Ripple on top. That's interesting. I don't remember looking at that. Let's take a peek. What are you used for? Let's see here. Ripple on top. Show me your usages. So, ripple on top. This guy grabs it. Show me what you get used for. So, interesting. This feels like something that needs to be fixed. So Boolean to Z-index converter. So when that guy gets set to true, this sets the Z-index to 2, or false goes to 0. This seems like something that I don't want as part of this change. And more importantly, it doesn't appear to be being used anymore. I'm wondering if this is also a leftover API. Let's just make sure this isn't being set somewhere that it is. So it's being used here. Setter type button. Because I really don't like having hard-coded Z-index values, because that can seriously bite us if somebody changes up the visual tree. I think this is going to be one of those that I'm going to have to come back and refactor before we merge this guy in. Circle back to it for now. Not a fan of it. I'm also not entirely sure that it makes sense to have both a dependency property and an attached property. I realize they're being used in slightly different ways, but this can probably be improved. So let's just make a quick note on that, because this is, I think that's going to block this thing getting merged tonight, because it is unfortunately getting late for me and I'm going to have to quit here in a little bit, but I'd like to get through this review and have a list of the stuff that needs to be fixed. That way I can go back through and get this merged. Let's see, shadow adorner. This is another control added to the core library. Oh boy, I did not notice these ones before. And I don't mind controls going into the what do you think that's a typo? So show me where you're used. Shadow adorner assist. Got it. So let's first of all add to team shared spelling dictionary. And this is why we add spelling checks. Let's see. Dorner. Nope, not that. So let's add shadow adorner assist to the list. Assist. Okay, it's now on my notepad document. We can continue down through this guy. He will be on my list of things to come back and go through, because it seems like this either needs to be cleaned up so that it is a good first-class citizen in the core lib, or it needs to be removed. So, okay, theme class implements iTheme. This is the standard object. I left this one public in case people wanted to derive from it. I saw no reason to hide it. It's just straight auto properties implementing it, but more importantly, it does have this static create method. So if you want a simple way of easily creating a theme from either light or dark, there are static properties for light and dark to get the base theme, and then you can just feed it a couple colors, and it'll do the rest. So white space. Theme extensions. These are fine. Theme manager assist. Yeah, this was one of the questions that I had posed. There's a question whether we should put in some routed commands to make it really easy to toggle the theme from XAML. I've never found a need for something like this. However, I can see how it might be very appealing, and it does open up the opportunity of doing full theme changes with just XAML and not needing any code behind it all. So I don't know if it'll make it in the first cut of this, but I think it is probably something worth looking at. I'm probably going to end up just stripping this class for purposes of merging the pull request, but with a note of coming back to this idea of should we add it. So there'll probably be a second issue I log just so this idea isn't lost. Or I'm sure Robert Snipe might come back and remind me. He definitely is an advocate for it. Theme manager extension. So this is the base class for those built-in ones. I don't know if people have a preference. Once again, I'm not sure I like my name of bundled theme for the markup extension. It works. Leave the to-do for now. Theme set event args. Let's clean. What is that used for? Theme set event args. Are you obsolete? You are obsolete. Yay. I always like changes that involve the delete key. Okay, so and here's where we get to that ripple stuff. We're going to need to come back and check that. Button corner radius. I'm gonna put that on here too. Button assist corner radius. Okay, color picker.xaml, not concerned with. Hex grid, this thing should drop once we remove it. Okay, so this is where packet reference, we want to whack everything after controls. Okay, let's go back up here. Oh, that was the packet reference, not the packet dependencies. This is one of the weird, confusing things. resource generator. I'm not real concerned with changes here, but I'm inclined to just whack both of these. No, let's leave them. This actually looks rather useful to pull that stuff in. Those are just used for generating the theming resource stuff, so that we don't have to type all of those changes everywhere. Same for like so all of those classes. This is just a simple command line tool for generating all of that stuff. As you can see, it does a whole bunch of hard-coded stuff and cleanup in here, which is good. Hex grid stuff, which will probably go away. Hex grid, hex grid, hex grid, hex grid control packet version, more hex grid, packet dependencies. Show me your diff. So it really is just the hex grid stuff. Kind of want to get rid of it. I don't think it's being used anymore now that we have our own color picker. So I believe if I rebuild, Packet has its own MS build task that it wires up, and it should, I think it'll just go through and update it. If not, I'll just run the Packet update command. But I think it cleans up all of this stuff automatically for you. We'll see. I think this might be where this pull request ends for tonight, since it is almost, I guess it's a little after 11 p.m. for me. And I should probably sleep at some point. Come on, little buddy. You can do it. You can do it. Okay. Did you do it for me? No. So, let's jump in. Toolkit. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how this goes. I believe it's if I do dot packet. Packet exe. I think it's just update. We'll see. This is why we have source control. So if I mess up, I can revert. Yeah, and some libraries you can see have already updated to the new .NET Core. Hex grid was referenced in packet references, but not found. Did I leave something in? I think not. I think that guy cleaned it up. Let me make sure. Those ones are all pinned, particular versions. And I believe, let's just look at the diff here real quick. But I think that was the exact change I wanted. Ooh, lots of cleanup, lots of cleanup. So compare with unmodified. Those guys got whacked, which means in the packet lock. Oh, it revved all the things. No, 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 no. Undo. Okay, what is it? Packet. Let's see here. It's not install. Update dependencies to various versions. And, oh, no, it is install. Right? Try that again, because I don't necessarily want to rev all the other dependencies. At some point, we should probably update them. But at least right now, I don't necessarily have time to evaluate them all. So reload all. And hopefully this has stripped out the hex grid stuff. Let's see here. No, still there. What's going on? What's going on? Okay, how do I do this? Manage automatic restore. And outdated. Oh, I was probably supposed to call remove on it, wasn't I? Show install package. Generate. It's probably supposed to call remove on all of those. Okay. New plan. Whack manually, because I'm tired and don't want to think too hard. And whack manually. Okay. Let's just make sure that guy works. And I won't stress too much about it. So I think at this point we are going on the 2.5 hour mark on the stream, which is probably a bit much. Hex grid item. Yeah. I think we can whack that guy too. I don't really want to bring in another user control. This was an alternate color picker that we had, where it kind of just gave you the hex items to go through and click on, which was cool. But if we've got our own color picker built in, we don't necessarily need to be reliant on another dependency. Come on, compile, and we can call this a wrap. Okay, so I'm going to go real quick here and just throw my notes into this. Boy, it is really unhappy about switching that around. Output, yay, build successful. Great. Okay, so outstanding items to review before merge. There is another PR in 260 that adds this. Consider merging it in along with this. Okay. Perfect. It goes there. And we are going to go here and lots of code cleanup while reviewing the PR. Great. Commit all in sync. So that is going to go live there, and we will have to come back to it again maybe next time. I might try and get some time later this week. Again, I'm going to try and do these streams once a week on the same time. So I think it's 3 a.m. Friday morning UTCs. So if that is a good time for you to jump on and join, great. Love to do more coding. Again, if there's questions people have or examples they want to see of something done, awesome. I'm happy to walk through and kind of explain and work through how I build WPF apps and patterns and practices and that sort of thing. Otherwise, I'm going to probably just spend my time working on the library and hopefully giving some more insight into how this works. So if this video was helpful for you, if you enjoyed it, you want to see me do more stuff, would really appreciate feedback, letting me know, either comments or just subscription so that I know that people are actually watching this. So glad being on. Hope to see you guys again next week. Thanks.